Here, here. Congratulations, Anita.
Yeah, congrats.
Hello, Craig Grace, agent for the applicant. Yes, please, if yeah, perfect, thank you. So the application before you today is for a laneway suite in the Pocket neighborhood, which is near Jones and Danforth. We're seeking 4 minor variances. It was designed to conform to the bylaws as closely as possible, but they were triggered because of a side lane condition. If you go to the next page, please. So the minor variances include separation from the lane on the side as well as from the main house, which I'll explain. There's also an angular plane and height variance that we have illustrations for. Next page, please. So when we look at the existing condition in context, the pink garage is the site in question. The design was created to maintain the footprint of this existing garage. So it does not get any closer to the main house or to the laneway. Although the second floor does cantilever a little closer to the laneway. If you go to the next page, there's an illustration of that. So the massing here illustrates that the second floor only cantilevers 1 foot over the existing footprint. That's to allow for 2 proper sized bedrooms on the second floor. They're actually very narrow, but we did feel it was important to get 2 bedrooms up here, so it was more family oriented than a 1-bedroom unit. And I'd also like to point out that if the separation and angular planes were taken from the main wall of the house, not the single-story rear addition, yeah, thanks, then these variances would not be triggered. And similarly, the height of the structure is 6 meters, so it would comply with the 2-story structure. Again, this is a technical variance triggered by that existing 1-story rear addition on the main house. And then if you do want to go to the next page again, so as mentioned, we have 17 letters of support, including many of the immediate neighbors to the south and across the lane. The homeowner has spoken to the neighbors on Seymour. Their concerns are generally related to a tree in the rear yard of 76 and 78. We are beyond the tree protection zone of that tree, so it will not be affected whatsoever. And we're perfectly happy to have a condition applied requiring urban forestry review and approval. And with respect to the concern about parking for 80 Seymour, as you saw in the picture, they do park off the laneway between our existing garage and their existing rear shed. That condition will be maintained. If you go back one more to the picture, that shows it quite well. So that condition will be maintained. Their parking will still be fully accessible from the laneway. And actually, if you go to the last page, we have an elevation to kind of show it all in context. You can see their 2-car parking space between the laneway suite and their existing shed, and how the massing relates to all the adjacent structures. Just to summarize, we did try to conform to the bylaws as closely as possible in terms of height, and footprints and what would be separation from the main wall of the house. And we feel that these variances really help make this more of a family-oriented unit, which will be a better benefit to the neighborhood than if we had conformed to a story and a half, 1-bedroom unit that would be less attractive to families. And I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Hi. Yes, my name is Chris Perry and my wife is here, Eden Rocket, and we live at 78 Seymour Avenue, which is directly, let's say, to the east behind the property in question. Sorry? In theory, but my wife is here.
It's right here as well.
So, yeah. Yeah, no, that's okay. Yeah, our main objection actually is the size of the unit, the fact that the variances have been applied and yet they don't really, from what we can see, are necessary. I have a prepared statement here which I'll read out, which will probably make things a bit easier. We do acknowledge the Laneway Suites citywide initiative to increase housing density. However, there are regulations in place that govern their construction, and in our view, these should not be relaxed to create the biggest possible structure at a particular site. Our principal objection is to variance number 1, which requests the minimum setback from the laneway be reduced from 1.5 meters to 0.7 meters, which is less than half. The minimum setback of 1.5 meters is in place for a number of reasons, and we feel that it should be maintained. Otherwise, the 6-meter high structure will loom over the alleyway and appear very obtrusive. There will also be less space for vehicle and pedestrian traffic in the laneway, which is heavily used. A potential safety concern could also exist since the doorway from the suite would open directly into the laneway. The reduced setback would also restrict our neighbors' access into their rear parking space, 78 Seymour Avenue. Sorry, 80 Seymour Avenue. The previous presenter, Craig, mentioned that there's room for 2 cars. That's not in fact correct. The width of that lot is 12 feet and most normal size cars are more than 12 feet. So it's actually not possible to park 2 cars in that. So our main objection is the variance, relaxing the variance from the laneway. The remaining variances relate to really the same issue. If the structure is to be 6 meters high, at a distance from 6.8 meters from the main house, rather than 7.5, we feel that the 45-degree plane requirement should be enforced. That way, the structure will look more balanced from the laneway, and the overall appearance will be less crowded. In summary, we feel that a suitable laneway suite could be constructed at this site within the city requirements, and the variances requested are only to increase the size of the building, to maximize the size. We feel that if the variances were not allowed, the building would be more modest and much less obtrusive. As far as the letters of support are concerned, we have an issue from that. If we could get a map of the neighborhood, perhaps it would be clearer if the presenter could put a map of the neighborhood. Yeah, that's it. I'm not sure if somebody from number 4, Queen Victoria, is going to speak, but that is on the opposite north side of Queen Victoria, a long way from the laneway, and the person there would not see this house or have any reason to walk down the laneway. Also, from the other letters, so that person really has no interest, or as far as I can see, shouldn't be making a valid comment. Some of the other people are also a long distance away. There's somebody on SHUDELL. There are 3 people on the west side of CONDOR, somebody on the east side of CONDOR, which is 9 blocks away, and then somebody on the west side of CONDOR, of Seymour rather, which is also a long way away. If you boil it down to the sort of nitty gritty of the laneway itself, there are 11 lots on the north side of the laneway, starting at 11 and ending at 31. And they have the support from numbers 11, 17, 19, and 29, sorry. So of those ones on the laneway, they only have 4 out of 11. And the other people either did not respond or didn't care. So that they're either against it or they don't care. We don't know that. But 17 letters of support is a bit of well, not a bit, a gross overstatement of the support. South of the laneway, the owners themselves supported, of course, and I think a couple of people just south of them. On the other end of the laneway, the development is opposed by 80, 78, and 76. So I don't think that the 17 letters of support really paints the picture of what the support is. Just to recap, our main, the tree, we agree, should not be impacted by this. It's far enough away. I don't think there will be a problem. The only reason for our concern about the tree is it does help hide this structure, or it will help hide this structure and provide shade. Okay, I'll wrap up. Our main objection really is to the variances, particularly the one from the laneway, because we feel the building will loom and push more into the laneway and make it appear more narrow. Thank you.
Hi there. Sure. I'm Stephen Massa, and I am the owner and resident here at 80 Seymour Avenue, along with my partner, Justin Tillman. Unfortunately, he cannot participate as he is an epidemiologist working on COVID, so he cannot be here. So I'm speaking for both of us. Sure. I just want to say that we're not in opposition to a laneway house being built. What we're in opposition to is the proposed size. Myself and Eden and Chris next door and the others, we live in very modest sized homes. Our homes are actually smaller than what's being proposed. And this building will be looming over our backyards, over the laneway, completely changing the environment with which we live. And we super appreciate. I'm a teacher and I come home from work and I love being out there in the backyard. If that tree were not there, I would be staring at that looming structure. But that's not my main concern. My main concern is the parking spot. You can see the photos that I presented. We have to park on an angle, and the angle with which we have to enter the parking spot does drive over a tiny piece of their property. We understand that. We've had an agreement. There's been no issue. I don't understand from their document submitted, the development application submitted December 3rd, which we've already seen. They show 2 things that are completely erroneous. They show that the distance there provided is enough for 2 cars to park side by side, but we can barely fit our car in on an angle from east to west. They think we can park north to south. They show 2 cars side by side there. And that's not possible whatsoever. So I don't know who did their measurements or who did their drawings, but it's a bold-faced lie. Second lie is the storage shed. Please look at how large they've depicted that storage shed. They've made it look almost actually as wide as the proposed house. Now, please look at our storage shed in the photograph, which they've included in this. So if you could scroll down on this development application where they show the pictures of our house, not the one that same presentation, yeah, right there. Please look at our shed. Does that look to you anything like what they've depicted? our storage shed is tiny. We can barely fit 2 bikes in there. They've made it look like it's a 2-car garage. So I'm assuming that was smokescreen to make it look like it would fit in with what's already presented in the laneway. That is not true. So those are my major concerns. And I obviously have the same concerns that Chris and Eden have presented. I'm not as eloquent with these things. This isn't my specialty. I'm a teacher. I could teach you French right now, but I definitely couldn't go over these things in detail. Again, I don't have a problem with them building something that's in line with what's already there. My concern is something that's going to be so large and imposing that it completely takes away from the vibe and the feel of what's an amazing community laneway used by everybody. And more importantly, our parking spot. So they have already shown in that document that they plan on putting a fence there as well. If there's a fence there, our car is so large, we've tried parallel parking in there. It's not possible with our car. We'll end up we hit our fence now. We're okay with that because it's our fence. But if they put a fence there and blocked off the angle of entry, we don't know what we're gonna do. We're gonna have to tear our shed down, tear our fence down, and rebuild. That's gonna cost thousands of dollars. He doesn't have time to deal with it. I don't have time to deal with it. We're stretched as it is. So I'm super stressed. It's making me insane, and I can't sleep over this because I'm so worried. I don't know what I can do, and I don't know what can be done to put in place that we're still able to use our parking spot. So that's all I have to say about that. So thank you for listening.
Yes, hello. Sure, yeah, thanks to Chris and Stephen for their comments. So it is important to focus on the fact that all the variances associated with this application are relative to the setback from the main house. That is what triggers the rear yard separation, the angular plane, and the height. All of those could be conformed to, and a 6-meter structure could be constructed adjacent to all of their properties fully as of right. Everything we're going for affects the rear yard of 85 Condor. And we do have letters of support from the neighbors to the south, who I would argue are most immediately affected by those variances. In terms of separation from the laneway, it is unfortunate that they have to drive across the property of 85 Condor to park their large car. But unfortunately, that's not something that I believe they should be able to rely upon. The existing situation will not be made much worse, if at all, by cantilevering a second floor slightly closer to the laneway. As a matter of fact, through our review with community planning, we did agree to cantilever the second floor only so that we could get the space where the bedrooms are, where it's needed, but also do our best to respect the vehicle flow through the laneway. In terms of the small fence being shown off the northeast corner, that certainly does not have to be there, and we're happy to apply a condition to say that we can build a fence there to keep their parking as accessible as possible. But ultimately, these variances do mostly affect the rear yard of the house as well as the neighbors to the south, not to the east. And we did do our best to respect the parking and vehicle flow as much as possible.
I do. Mr. Reyes, just to confirm, so I know that I am understanding the application correctly in terms of the setback of the first floor of the laneway suite. I understand the second floor is cantilevered and shifted over. Is the footprint basically the same, the garage as it abuts the lane and the rear yard of number 80 Condor, or Seymour, I'm sorry, 80 Seymour?
Sure, so the setback, sorry.
No, go ahead, please. If you could just explain that, I think you understood my question.
Yeah, the setback we are attempting to achieve is the proudest most point of the existing garage, and we took that as a parallel line from the property line adjacent to the laneway. Does that answer your question? If you go to the photo of the laneway, I think that illustrates it best. So you can see there's a prouder portion of garage, the far side of the basketball net.
Yes, I see that. Okay, so it is coming up a bit more, but it's going to be in line with the part that's closer to the laneway and that sticks out.
Yes, that's
Is that
correct.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. Thank you. No.
Well, maybe I'll just kick it off. I understand and the concerns from the neighbors that, I mean, there's a massing issue. There's also the access to parking issue. Having said that, I do note that the proposal is within the 6 meter as of right standard for laneway suites. And the fact that the main floor is stepped back a little bit from the laneway gives me comfort. I'm not as concerned about the height and the separation issue. I think the agent kind of made the point that it's not really the main building, it's the small addition off the back where the separation issue comes in. I'm personally not opposed to this application for that reason. I do wonder, there is a little fence structure right on the corner there, which I know the resident in behind is quite concerned about in terms of access. I don't know whether there's an opportunity for the agent to do something about that, maybe satisfy some of those concerns. That's beyond our purview. But I'm not uncomfortable with this application proposal in the context of broader laneway suite bylaw.
I agree with Larry's comments. I think that this does. It's rare that we see applications like this that are on a flanking laneway. Usually, it's one where you're going laneway to or garage to garage side. So this is a bit of an adjustment to get used to, and I think for the public as well. But I think this does satisfy the spirit of the bylaw with the angular plane and height proportions being acceptable. So I support this application.
I actually support the application as well, and I thank the agent for his presentation. I think it was very useful to have the presentation package in the materials to show, while there's still variances, how in some respects they are technical in terms of the angular plane. I also think, the fact that this is on a flanking access to the laneway, it was nice that on the sides of the structure that abut neighboring properties, there's no privacy or overlook concerns. So I do think this is more of a sensitive to the surroundings in terms of how it's been designed. So I'm also in support of the application for this.
I'm happy to bring forward a motion for approval subject to development engineering's conditions received on October 15th.
I'll second that.
Yes, I am. Can you hear me, Madam Chair? Yes, name is Chris Marchese, planner from Design Plan Services, here on behalf of the owners of 37 BOUSTEAD Avenue. Yeah, just quickly, I just wanted to let the committee know that through a miscommunication with committee staff, that a cover letter was submitted to planning, but unfortunately was not submitted to the committee and is not in your package. So I will be just referring to most of that information that was sent to the planner already. But to start, I would like to say that 37 BOUSTEAD Avenue is located just southwest of Dundas Street West and Bloor Street West, with Dundas Street West subway station just steps away from the subject property. The subject property currently has a frontage of 7.62 meters and is located on the south side of BOUSTEAD Avenue. The neighborhood consists of all different types of built forms, including singles, semis, duplexes, triplexes, and apartment buildings. Due to the width of the lot, it is not feasible to provide a lane to park in the rear of the property, which is a condition that exists in many locations and lots on the street. Therefore, without the approval of these variances, there will be no parking available on the subject property. Designing the home with an integral garage to prevent front yard parking would also create a dwelling type that is not typical and does not currently exist on the street. BOUSTEAD Avenue in its entirety, along both the north and south sides of the street, has a unique condition where the municipal boulevard starts from the street or the curb and extends into what is functioning as the front yards of all the dwellings. This is a very wide and large boulevard in the front of the subject property and along BOUSTEAD Avenue. There are many examples on BOUSTEAD Avenue where driveways located on the municipal boulevard lead to a parking spot in the front yard of the dwellings on private property. The subject property also has an existing parking pad located on the front of the property since at least 2007. I'm sure it's many years past this, but I was unable to locate a photo that extends past 2007, and looks to have a municipally constructed curb cut to allow access to the already existing parking pad. Due to the condition mentioned above in regard to the municipal boulevard, the existing parking pad located on the subject property is now fully on private property. The acceptance of this variance would allow the applicant to extend the driveway to provide parking on the subject property that is located fully within private property and not on the municipal boulevard. Transportation Services have said due to the parking spot being located on private property, they have no objection to these variances. If the acceptance of the variances for the parking is refused, variance 6 would stay the same because the parking pad is existing on the property today, and it would have a negative impact on number 9 because the variance would be then reduced 0 proposed, where right now 1's proposed where 3 is required. I'll be happy to answer any other questions at this point, but based on the information provided, I am of the opinion that all the variance in this application here in front of you today meets the 4 tests under Section 45(1) of the Planning Act, and I ask that the committee kindly approve this application. Thank you.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
we are. Himanshu Singh will be speaking, and my spouse, Nasheed Farman, is here also. Yes. Yes, good morning, board members. My name is Himanshu Singh, and I'm a resident of 36 BOUSTEAD Avenue, directly opposite the proposed site. Thank you for your time, and I do apologize for not sending in a formal letter of complaint because we actually did not get any notification in the mail, and it was only when we noticed a green construction sign that we realized that something was going on, and then we looked it up, and that's why we actually registered for the webinar, for the WebEx. We live directly opposite the house, and we have a number of issues with the proposed development. The first and the main issue really is a misrepresentation in the application. The application states that the house is currently a triplex and it is being converted to a quadplex. That is not true. The house was occupied by a single family. I believe it was sold as a duplex as recently as 2018. And so the claim that it is a triplex and only one additional unit is being added to make it into a fourplex is false. I think it is a substantial change in the nature of the property to go from a duplex, which is a lot of houses have a basement apartment and then you have the main house. But the way this is being done, and when you look at the plans, it's a massive development that will really make it into a quadplex, a rental property. And the issues that have been discussed around the parking, absolutely. I mean, this is a residential street, so it is not right to build a four-unit building, and that too, these are big-sized apartments, and they will add to the street parking pressure. They will substantially change the nature of the neighborhood from being a single-family residential street. It is close to Dundas West and Roncesvalles, but it is not at the corner as is being represented. I mean, I can look at the house directly across from my front window, and we are definitely inset in from Dundas. Alhambra is next door to us, and after that you hit Roncesvalles. So it's not as if it's fronting onto a busy boulevard or at the corner where there's traffic. This is really a residential part of the street, and building a fourplex, massive development with such a GFA and extensions to the front and extensions to the back and to the top really substantially change the nature of how people live on the street. And we are extremely concerned because we already have issues with, I know it's not under your jurisdiction, but we have a fourplex right next door to us that has been an absolute nightmare with illegal Airbnb rentals that has been flagged multiple times to the city. So we are vehemently opposed to adding one more fourplex to the existing streetscape, especially when the existing building was not a rental and definitely not a triplex. Thank you.
Yes, now I am here. Can you hear me? Perfect. Yeah, no problem. Through you, Madam Chair, in terms of what was defined as what the building is right now, that's the zoning examiner's interpretation. He's defined it that it is a triplex or the units that exist there now and what's being proposed. I just want to state for the all committee members that triplexes and fourplexes are found in the area because it is zoned R, and all building types in terms of singles, semis, duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, and apartment buildings are all permitted. So you'll see a variety even on BOUSTEAD of mixed built forms because they're all permitted. In terms of parking, the subway is steps away. When I mean steps away, it's within a 500-meter radius. It's within walking distance to this. So it is an area that meets the intensification of the targets of what the municipality is trying to achieve. And then I think it just goes back to 4.1.5 of the official plan of respecting and reinforcing the existing characteristics on the street in the immediate and the broader context. And I'm of the opinion that this proposal is doing that. So I think I've answered all his questions and his concerns, and I'll be happy to answer any other questions at this point.
I have one question. It's maybe more technical, but on the project summary, the data sheet, the front yard landscaping numbers are confusing to me. I see 55% being shown for soft landscape in the front yard, and I can't see how that's possible. So could you walk through those numbers and how they relate to your proposal, please?
Yeah, so I think I'm just trying to pull them up here, and you're asking in relation to front yard landscaping what the percentage is for front yard. So soft landscaping is 67%, front yard landscaping is 94%, and I think that's because it extends past the municipal boulevard, and the municipal boulevard the property line runs halfway up what's considered to be the front yard of the property. So extending past the front yard, there's more soft landscaping that can be considered for the property, but I'm not sure how the zoning examiner fully interpreted that, but that is the interpretation based on the plans we given him, that is the accurate amount that is being provided. So I'm not sure how it was interpreted, but I know we're meeting the requirements necessary. And I can assume that it's because of the municipal boulevard situation on the front property line.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, and through you, Madam Chair, that's a fair point, and I do agree with Madam Secretary Treasurer. The thing is that those numbers on the plans might be interpreting some of the numbers past that, but the interpretation and the statistical count of the zoning examiner has said that we're meeting that requirement. So those numbers, sometimes the numbers don't line up with what the zoning examiner interprets or sets out the variances to be, but he's based our plans. He was satisfied with the information we provided him, and there's no issues with the front yard landscaping on the proposal.
Okay.
I tried to find out what was going on, Madam Chair, with the front yard parking. It is municipally curb cut. I can't confirm that there is a front yard parking permit on there, but as far as I believe, again, the transportation stuff's a little out of my profession, but I believe that the variance identifies it to be the permit that's issued. But by us going fully on private property, it satisfies the transportation services, because right now it's not on private property. And I know just from experience that they're trying to get all parking spots on private property and off the municipal boulevards if possible. No, this was my letter. This was my cover letter to planning to explain the transportation related variances. It's up to Madam Secretary Treasurer. I had a conversation with her yesterday, and if she wishes to put it on the AIC after this meeting, that's up to her discretion. I was told that we've missed a deadline for it to be put on the record, so I'm following by the rules by Madam Secretary Treasurer. But
I got an answer. I think that the zoning staff are comfortable with that, but I mean, just looking at the site plan, I can't understand, even with the boulevard line, how that would be 55% soft. Like the driveway is taking up 40% of it on its own, basically. Anyway, but that's kind of not relevant right now, I think. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
just through you, Madam Chair, just if we go to get a building permit and the building permit issues a finding that we're not compliant to front yard landscaping, we're going to have to come back to the committee to get that variance. So it'll be all reviewed through building permit drawings, and if they find and identify that there's insufficient front yard landscaping, then we'll be forced to come back to committee to get a front yard landscaping variance. Fair enough, Madam Chair. Through you, Madam Chair, I accept the comments through the Secretary Treasurer, and I have no issue with that. If that is identified going forward, I do not believe that that will be the case.
I'll start off. I don't really have an issue with the building as it's proposed. I think it is large, but I think there are a lot of instances of this on this street in terms of the depth and height being sought. And I think it's positive to be adding new rental units in such proximity to transit, higher order transit. I think in terms of the the conditions that planning is, or the refusal requests that planning is putting forward. I'm very sympathetic to that. And so I think I would be in line of, I'm feeling like I would support this application, but not variances 3 and 6.
Well, I partially agree with Peter. I'm not uncomfortable with the application for the house and the changes there. And I, like Peter, I do support intensification. And this particular site is frankly within 10-minute walk of the subway station, and those are the sorts of areas where we should be looking at gentle intensification. I want to think a little bit about the variance on parking. There is an existing curb cut, and there is going to be a parking issue, frankly, for the residents of that house. If we can, and it looks like survey of the street looks like street parking is tight. So in equations where there's an existing curb cut and an existing parking pad, I'm not entirely sure I agree with planning staff's recommendation to remove it. I wonder if it could be, just for our discussion, I wonder if it could be left in place, however, converted into something that's water permeable as opposed to a concrete pad. And that satisfies, I think, our general concern about these things and their contribution to runoff. But when there's an existing curb cut and already, and it's been in place for some time, I just wonder if we can't help some of the issues about parking on the street by remediating that parking pad into something which is a little bit more positive.
If I could just weigh in on that. I have no issues with the proposed increase in size for the fourplex, and I think it really does come down to the parking issue. And I have to agree with Larry. Normally, I tend to not be in favor of front yard parking, and in this case, I think it's an exception. Because there is a curb cut, and also because often when we see objections, I think from staff about the front yard parking, there may not be a curb cut, or the car can't totally be contained wholly within private property. Often it's going onto the city boulevard, and that's not happening in this case. They've shown they can fit a spot on their own property, and that was sort of the key to me to take an unusual route and support the front yard parking. The fact that there is an existing curb cut and they can fit the spot on their property. I like Larry's suggestion very much about it being permeable paving, because even though there's not a variance for soft landscaping, I was also looking at why the driveway looks like it takes up most of the front yard. So I think that would be a good compromise in my view, and I would support that motion that Larry has suggested.
Peter, are you okay with that as a compromise?
Yeah, I get what you're saying, and I was on the fence in terms of just because it's there, right? I think that's always the thing, and I think probably the environmental damage of ripping it up and putting it in some fill somewhere might be more than leaving it in place. Anyway, yeah, go ahead, Larry.
Okay, sure. I'll then, if that's the case, I'll move approval of this application. I don't think there are any conditions, but we would impose a condition that the front yard parking pad be converted into water permeable pavers.
I'm happy. I'll second. I like that motion. Thank you.
Hello, committee members. This is David Riley from SGL Planning. I'm here on behalf of the applicant and agent. And Anita, I just wanted to say congratulations, all the best to you and your future plans. And it's been great working with you over the years. So just wanted to say that before I forgot.
I do. Mr. Riley, just in terms of the prior variance, I noticed there's a prior variance that was to, and I'm assuming, okay, so it's to I guess, legalize or reduce 5 units to 4 units, and then there was a GFA of 1.24 that was approved. Are all the variances being triggered again because you're putting an addition on, or what happened?
Yeah. So the previous application was sought under a different owner, and I believe so. There's 4 units existing in the building, and what's happened about a year ago, the new owner purchased and built an addition, which was without a building permit on the 2nd floor. And part of this application is to legalize that and then build the 3rd story addition to match up with where the 2nd floor is, which is triggering the variances again for the 4 units and the GFA. And it's not really I did want to note that, although when you look at the previous application, it looks like, oh wow, this GFA was a lot higher, but you can't really compare it because it's under the old zoning bylaw where the basement was included then. So I just wanted to note that, just to clarify. I haven't done the exact, I haven't done the exact comparison, but just to note, when you look at the existing GFA of the dwelling as it is, without the 2nd story, which is there, but without the 2nd story because that was constructed without a permit, the existing GFA is 0.82. So if you look at adding that 2nd story, which is there, plus the 3rd story, you get to the 0.99, which is additional, I believe, 39.21 square meters, but that's over the 2 floors. So, in my opinion, it's not a huge impact in terms of additional GFA, and you're generally lining up the building with the neighboring buildings to the side, and of course not introducing any windows on the sides that would have any potential overlook issues.
Yeah, if I could just to confirm. So the 2nd story rear addition was constructed without a permit. Is that done by the previous owner or your client?
No, that was done by the current owner. And so now I believe that once the building inspector came over and they realized, this needs to go through a process, that's when all of this kicked into gear. And then while they're going through the process, they decided to make the 3rd unit a bit larger, still going to be a 1 bedroom on the 3rd floor, but providing a little bit more living space and a more comfortable unit. They wanted to add that and kind of incorporate everything into the application. Plus of course, the rear stairs.
So does your client have sort of what was the reason for building this without a permit?
That I couldn't speak to. I've only recently become involved in this, so I'm not sure. I think he realizes that wasn't the right thing to do now, of course, and now they're just trying to fix the whole situation by coming here.
Yeah, I get that. This committee sort of, you can appreciate, term frowns on these kinds of applications where people build things without getting the proper certification and authorization.
Yes.
So
yeah, of course, and that's why I think it's important when I describe the additional GFA, I need to include the 2nd story as well, because you can't consider that as, although it's technically existing, you have to look at it as a whole package as an additional GFA.
And there is a laneway suite associated with it?
Yes, there is. Yes, so it's a 1 bedroom laneway suite, and what's nice about it is that the laneway suite bylaw requires that 1.5 meter setback from the laneway, which is being provided here, which is a good opportunity. If you look at the laneway, there's not I don't believe there's many or any laneway suites existing on this lane right now, but when you have the 1.5 meter setback, and because it's still going to be just a one parking space, there's an opportunity to introduce landscaping in front of the laneway suite. So I think that's going to be a nice feature for the laneway. And then there's a couple variances associated with rear yard landscaping. But generally, I think that these are the intent of those soft landscaping requirements in the rear yard is really to ensure, you know, that you do have that balance between soft and hard landscaping. And I think that the configuration of the landscaping, in that it's contiguous, it's not patchy pieces of soft landscaping, I think that helps to maintain the intent of the bylaw. And then, of course, having that additional landscaping along the laneway is a nice feature in terms of the character of the laneway.
I have a question about the rear yard soft landscaping. Variance 1 and variance 4 both touch on that, but from different kind of angles. I'm just not understanding why one of them has 58% being provided and one says 34%. Can you clarify that, please?
Yep, sure. So yeah, so the first variance, basically it looks at the space between the rear wall of the dwelling and the nearest wall of the laneway suite. So of that space, it's saying that a minimum of 85% within there must be soft landscaping. And when you do that calculation, that works out to 58%. But then the other variance is of the entire rear yard. So that's including the space where the laneway suite sits, all the way to the back laneway from the rear wall of the house. A minimum of 50% of that whole area needs to be minimum soft landscaping. And that calculation works out to 34%. So that's the difference between the two. And that additional amount that you see is because of that landscaping on the laneway portion of the, on the laneway side of the laneway suite.
But wouldn't that be, yeah, and I'm still not really understanding, because the second one, the variance 4 is 34% provided. So if you're including the additional landscaping on the laneway side, shouldn't it be higher than the variance, than the 58% in variance?
No, because you're incorporating the area that is the entire area between the rear wall of the house all the way to the laneway, which includes the actual laneway suite itself.
Okay.
So you measure it's just a difference in the amount of yard that goes into the calculation.
Okay, thanks.
No problem.
Madam Chair, I'm prepared to make a few comments on this one. Well, as Larry has pointed out, this committee does take very seriously any construction that occurs without a permit. You know, that is not something that I think grants you any leeway in terms of support for variances if it's already existing. But in any event, I'm looking at it like it doesn't exist. And this proposal, in my view, I don't think having the addition at the back necessarily has much, you know, a significant impact on surrounding properties. I've noted that it's going back about the depth of, you know, some properties in the vicinity, and while those seem to be 2 stories, it's within the same footprint that this third story is being proposed, or the rear 3-story. I'm okay with that additional density, and as we saw before, there was already granted a variance for the 4 units. So I don't have concerns with that. I initially was looking at the variance for the softscape, but I'm satisfied with what Mr. Riley said. The fact that they're providing a contiguous piece of softscaping in the back actually, I think, is helpful. Often we see it broken up into planters and smaller pieces. I think that's probably more useful, and the additional soft portion along abutting the adjacent to the lane, I also think is very, to me, mitigates any increases the softscape and helps in terms of runoff. So I support the application, generally speaking, subject to I think, the conditions set out in the memo from engineering.
I agree as well. I'd support that.
Yeah,
I'd support
I
that,
agree as
Lisa.
well. And I agree with Lisa's comments. I do think that, you know, sometimes when a permit isn't issued, it's often a previous owner, and then the existing owner has to kind of pick up the pieces and try and legalize it. In this case, it was the existing owner. So while you know, those are serious things that we should take seriously, I agree with Lisa that on the whole, this application fits in well with the existing community. So Lisa, you want to make a motion?
Sure, I'm happy to bring a motion forward for approval of the application, subject to the conditions set out in the development engineering memo.
Sure, I'll second that.
Good morning, Madam Chair. It's Kyle Kadra. Thank you for that introduction. If you just allow me to just thank Anita and congratulate her. She's been very helpful in previous applications, and she will be missed. Thanks, Madam Chair. So this is an existing, very old building, over 100 years old, and it has currently 5 units, very small units, 3 of which have bedrooms in the attic area. Many of the variances are based on existing conditions. As you can see, that the side yard setback on the flanging side is 0 meters. And it's also non-compliant on the interior side yard. So the intention is to convert it to a triplex with something that is more complying with the building code, and something that would be more encouraging for good quality tenants, hopefully. The owner is also planning to be living on the 2nd floor, and all of the rooms in the attic space are going to be eliminated. So we did have several discussions with the planning department. We made some revisions to the layouts to address their concerns, and finally, the planning department had no further concerns after making all of those revisions. This property sits between several blocks with zoning labels that allow much higher floor space indexes. So just across the Norwood Terrace, you'll find that the zoning bylaw allows over 1.0 FSI, and all of the surrounding blocks allow for 1 or more than 1.0 FSI. This is just a slither that requires this lower FSI, but in general, like there's many of the buildings in this area do have a higher floor space index. Finally, we did get support, both verbal and in writing, from 12 neighbors so far. We missed the deadline to include it in the package, unfortunately, but I have sent 11 of them yesterday to Bavik, and I'll send the new one today. If you'd like me to list those addresses really quickly, on Enderby, we have 86, 92, 100, 102, and 80 and 108 as well from the tenants. 104 and 106. And on Norwood, we have 30 Norwood and 15 and one more on 9 Little York. That concludes my presentation, Madam Chair.
Good morning. This is Robin Heater, Huether. I am the owner and resident of 14 Norwood Terrace, and I'm representing the neighbors opposing the variances. There is about 11 plus of us who are opposing the development. We're not in opposition of development in neighborhoods. We just feel that this one is, the density of this one exceeds what is in context with our neighborhood. I trust that the committee read our letters, so I'm not going to reiterate what was in our letters. What is being asked for is 76% more than what is allowable on this site. There's already been an approval for 45% more density on this site. And so we're concerned with asking for 1.05. I understand there are letters of support, but I feel that Norwood Terrace is going to have the largest impact from the development since we are on the west and north side of the property. What they're asking for is a two-story extension that goes back further than what is existing now. The densification of the addition triggers, there's 10 variances being asked for. 5 of those variances are being triggered by this intensification. In particular, the front porch is being proposed to be enclosed. The typology of the neighborhood is that it's typically open setback porches. And that's really going to change the street frontage on this corner. It's our strong opinion that this development doesn't actually meet the 4 tests. It's not in the context of the neighborhood. Its setback, its typology is not meeting the criteria of the neighborhood. Soft landscaping is a question as well. It looks like there is going to be a reduction in the soft landscaping in the front yard due to the enclosure of the porch and having to extend hard landscaping to accommodate that. Yeah, so that's all I have to say at this point.
Yes, I am. Can you hear me? Yes, my name is Jonathan Bradshaw, and I live at 15 Norwood Terrace, which is located directly adjacent to the proposed development to the west. And just to be clear, I believe my address was listed as one of those in support. I am in opposition of this, so I just wanted that to be clear. One of the previous speakers said that. And so just to be very brief, I will reiterate everything that Robin just outlined. I am opposed to the requested variance based solely on the area of the lot and the requested variance, which would equal 1.058 times the area of lot in an area that's permitted for a maximum of 0.6 times the area of the lot, which is 76% more than is allowable. It's very much exceeding the size of which is consistent with everything that is both on Enderby and Norwood Terrace, and would also have certainly a negative impact on the streetscape of both. And I also feel that it's my understanding that, again, the property has already received a very generous approval of 0.87 times the area of the lot, which is 45% more than is allowable, which I think should be more than enough and is reaching the upper limits of what is allowable in the context of the existing neighborhood. So in closing, I don't think a variance of this size would respect the existing physical character of the area. And I think neighborhood development should be sensitive, gradual, slow, and something that is 1.058 times the area of the lot would not meet those terms in this context. So thank you very much and appreciate your time.
I'm here, Madam Chair. Yes, Madam Chair. So the side yard setbacks and yes, Madam Chair, let me just pull out the public hearing notice. So item number 1, a secondary suite. There is an existing secondary suite, but we're making alterations to the exterior, and therefore this is being triggered as well. So this is based on an existing condition. Madam Chair, do you mean to? Okay, Madam Chair. So like the side yard is an existing condition, but because we're doing an addition, it's being triggered. So I hope I understand you correctly. So number 1, we're not increasing. You mean to say which ones we're not increasing? Yes. Yeah. Yes, ma'am. Number 5 is existing. Number 6, number 8, and number 9, and number 10. Yes, Madam Chair. So first I want to address the support. I did receive a note from my client that they got support from 15. So I'm guessing this is a mistake or a typo. I apologize for that. In regards to the comments provided by Mrs. Roberts about the degree of density and this not being aligned with the surrounding properties, I honestly disagree with this comment because just across Norwood, all of the properties are 1.0 FSI or higher. The zoning bylaw already permits 1.0. And if you look at the map, you'll notice that the size of the building is very similar to most of the surrounding buildings. It is fair to say that this property was severed in 2006, from my understanding, and therefore the lot is slightly smaller than most of the surrounding lots. So in terms of the impact, like we do have a lot of support on Enderby side, and the landscaping, the addition is not causing any changes to the percentage of landscaping, neither on the front nor the back. Those are all existing conditions. Let me just see what other aspects they discussed here. Like the concern about, sorry, the concern about the floor space index. Like we are, eliminating some space actually from the attic that used to be used for 3 lofts. This was not shown on the deficiency, like the zoning deficiency notice, because I'm guessing a lot of years ago, this was not identified as being permitted through a building permit. But our client's intention is to really intensify the area in a positive manner, and we're really hoping that we don't see it impacting the neighborhood in any negative way at all. And this area in particular, if you just walk around this area, you'll see that there's a lot of multiplexes and a lot of buildings have illegal units and rooming houses, and we're trying to go with something. We want to really legalize it and make all things permitted through a building permit. And we hope that you look at this from our perspective as well and understand that this is a good intensification. Thank you very much.
Chair, yes, a couple. I'm just looking at the site plan. So there is an existing 1-story addition off the back existing. Is that correct?
Through the chair, yes, Mr. Clay.
So it looks like the proposed 2-story addition incrementally increases on the footprint of that 1-story. Is that correct?
That is correct. And also the basement. So that wasn't excavated before, and we're going to demolish it and excavate the basement and increase the size of the basement as well. Yes.
The proposed front addition, is that simply enclosing the existing porch?
That is correct, Mr. Clay. And we are okay with the conditions set by planning as well.
I noticed across the street on Enderby, that looks like it's some sort of commercial operation. Is that correct?
Yes.
And lastly, I am a little bit concerned, well, I'm not concerned about the 0% soft landscaping in the rear, and I get that that's an existing condition.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, that is, a really difficult pill to swallow, I think, for many of us. And is this something, given that you're excavating, if you get approved, you would be excavating in the rear. Is this something that, as part of your work, that you could fix in some way?
Actually, through the chair, Mr. Clay, this is one thing that we went through with the planning department. We were contemplating on either converting this parking area to landscaping or to keep the parking space. And we finally determined that it may be a better option to keep it for parking so that we don't have to use even more on-street parking. If the committee feels that it is better to convert that to a landscape backyard, then I would completely support that. We're okay with that, but that's going to increase the variances probably for the parking spaces. So it's like either this or that. So we decided to go with a variance for landscaping instead, which is an existing condition because this space is currently used for parking.
But if the committee were so inclined, would you be open to, if it does stay parking, could you convert it into permeable paving stones?
Absolutely, Mr. Clay. Yes, for sure.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question, please. I think part of following up on Larry's comments about the parking and the backyard and landscape deficiency, the question comes to the garage. And I mean, from the photos it seems like it's not actually accessible from the street. So can you tell me what the garage is being used for?
Yes, this is an interesting aspect. When our client purchased this property, we found that this garage is actually used as a loft. So it was converted to a living space. And it was our intention initially to legalize it as well. But the planning department advised us that it would be best to eliminate that and convert it back into parking. or to wait for the new provisions that are being proposed by council to allow for more something similar to laneway suites. I don't recall what it's going to be called. So we put this on the side with full understanding from both planning and zoning department. And we're going to convert this to parking space or pursue legalizing it through a separate application. But for now, we were told to best to just convert it back to a parking space.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. I think so, Madam Chair. I think where it says existing asphalt, existing shed, and maybe on a point beyond the parking space between the parking and property line, we can put a strip of soft landscaping there, and we can convert the parking space to a permeable pavers. So for sure, yeah, we can do that. If you want to set that as a condition, we would be welcome to incorporating it into the design. Thanks.
I'll start. I think the development being proposed is fine from my perspective. I think it's an incremental change to the back. That's the main thing, right? In terms of the actual floor space that's being added, and and I think I respect what the applicant is describing about trying to make these better, safer kind of units. I think that's a positive thing. To Larry's point about the parking space, I think I would support that, but I do have concerns about the garage basically still functioning as a living space, but we're not considering it as such in the application. So I'm not really sure how to consider that. I don't know if you guys have thoughts.
Yeah, I hadn't realized that, Peter, till you raised it. That's a really good point. I thought I heard the applicant said that based on city staff's comments that they're reverting it back to parking, which might address the habitable kind of issue in something that isn't actually legal. But I don't know whether we could, I mean, if the proponent wants to apply once if Garden Suites actually gets approved, then presumably they may be able to apply under that new provisions. But in the meantime, it should be used for parking, which I guess we could put a condition on if that's what we thought was appropriate.
Right.
But I'm kind of with you. It doesn't seem like the proposals incrementally are that significant compared to what's already existing there.
Yes, ma'am, I'm here. Yes, ma'am.
I mean, I'm hesitant to put that condition and remove a dwelling unit, just from a, less from a planning perspective, but more from a, I don't know, from a human perspective. But I think it's a shame that we're not looking at the entire site basically as a whole. I mean, I wish that the garage would have been incorporated into it as it is currently being used. But that's not the case.
So just a suggestion. So if let's just play this out. If, well, notwithstanding the rest of the application, but if we were silent on the use for the garage, would it not then simply be an enforcement issue by another? Yeah. So I mean, maybe the best thing to do is be silent, and if through the enforcement process, you know, some sort of accommodation is made or not, then that's the appropriate path maybe for that issue to be addressed.
That makes sense to me.
Okay. So I'm prepared to make a motion on this one, Chair, if you like. So again, for all the reasons we've been talking about, I think we're reasonably comfortable with the application. So I would move approval, but subject, I think planning has conditions with respect to the front porch. So subject to that planning staff condition, plus also I think we'd like to put a condition in with respect to the parking, that the parking be converted into permeable pavers and additional soft landscaping incorporated into the design as appropriate. Yeah, I think that's existing asphalt or concrete right now, and if they're going to be doing excavation, then that seems like an easy fix. Ah. Well, then, if can we do that now, Madam Secretary Chair, or do we?
Yes, Madam Chair. I can probably do it in 20 minutes or so. Okay, sounds good, Madam Chair. Thanks.
Hello, Madam Chair. This is Peter Higgins of Peter Higgins Architect Incorporated. Our address is 124 Merton Street, Suite 204, Toronto, Mary 4, Sam 2, Zebra 2. Will do.
No, I'm here. I'm here.
And thank you, Madam Chair. If you cannot start the clock for just a moment, I would like to also, as a previous speaker, give my regards to Madam Deputy Secretary Treasurer Anita. It's been a long haul, Anita. I'm seeing you. You can't see me, but I can see you, and thankfully you're smiling. We've had lots of ups and downs and backs and forths, and you've been an amazing civil servant and helping this great city of ours get through a lot of issues when it comes to planning, and certainly Committee of Adjustment, and we'll certainly miss you. So congratulations on your retirement and all the best in your new life. Thank you, Anita. Thank you. I appreciate that very much. Now, Madam Chair, if you can start the clock. We hand-delivered 16 packages to all nearby neighbors, as is our norm. As you mentioned, we received support from 3 neighbors. Most importantly, though, we met in person with both immediate neighbors to the south and to the north, and had multiple email and telephone conversations with them. We also spoke to and had emails with Jeremy Gowan of the Moore Park Residents Association, who is well known to this committee. And he, in addition, spoke to both the immediate neighbors, north and south, and expressed that he was reasonably satisfied with what we had proposed and that the Moore Park Residents Association would not take any stand. Number 51 to the south, we've been trying to make them happy. I designed that house some years ago. The new owners, recent owners, contacted us to see if we could help maintain their privacy and improve the light into a side window that they have facing north, which to date has enjoyed for them many months worth of natural light and view over the bungalow to the north, which will indeed be blocked. We in turn moved our bedroom window facing south. You might want to go to the side elevation if you could. There we go. So up on the second floor, where you see 2 windows with interior fire shutter noted, and a dotted line is where their window for their study is. We shifted that bedroom window in our proposal well to the left, which is west, so that there would be no overlook, no direct overlook whatsoever. And unfortunately, we've submitted all these revised drawings, but I don't believe they were accepted because we were 4 hours late, and we're trying to negotiate with the neighbors all through this. Now, nevertheless, that neighbor is still concerned about their loss of light, so they had asked through their lawyer for, at the last minute, really, just a couple of days ago, a $3,000 offering from my client to them in order to help them install a skylight. I researched the old plans and told them, yes, the skylight could go in and provide natural light into their second floor north-facing study. My client, I asked my client, and he, at that point, then noted to me that he, for 2 to 3 months, has allowed the south neighbor, with no compensation, to use his property to access the backyard of 51 in order to put in a pool. I'm only saying that because we do find it surprising that the south neighbors are opposing, considering that they're using my property, my client's property for access. It's been a mess. It's not just related to a small machinery strip along the side. They have been using the front yard for depositing material. There is no tree protection, which is a contravention of the bylaw for the municipal tree in the front yard. They've been parking trucks. They even had signs from the pool company on my client's property. Their loss of light, unfortunately, is not something we can do. We are allowed to build a house next door. We did reduce the height of the roof. We had a 1 foot overage, and with conversations with the planning department, we removed that variance. We do have front and rear main wall height variance of approximately 0.49. We think that's fairly minor. It really relates to the style of the house. It is similar to the house next door, but different. I wanted to make this committee very aware that the design has no side, front, or rear gables, dormers, chimneys, or any such structures that would add to the mass of the proposed house, would add to the feeling of loss of sunlight, and even potentially the feeling of loss of privacy because of a looming structure. We align with the house to the south in terms of the parapet wall. We are shorter than the house to the south in terms of the overall height of the roof. And we have, as I said, no vertical dimensions whatsoever that would add to the neighbor's angst. The north neighbor, number 61, I met with them in person. I took photographs and measurements of the sidewall of their house. They do have a very large high fence that gives them privacy in their backyard. Again, we made up a whole bunch of drawings showing the transposition of their windows onto our north-facing side. Yes, I'm almost finished. Yeah. I'll wrap up immediately. We just so you know, we removed a window on the north side and we changed a window on our north side to translucent glass. We also clearly pointed out that we had no direct privacy issues. And while they have 6 windows facing south, we only have 3 windows facing north. So I think I'll leave it at that. Oh, one last thing was we did 2 days ago offer to cut the northeast corner of our house with a 2-story, 2 foot by 2 foot notch, because the main issue that we were talking about while standing in the backyard was the corner windows that the neighbor to the north has that go up 1.5 or 2 stories. And we felt that if we notched the corner, that would allow them light and view to their property and from their property over my client's property. And as I understand it, that has not been accepted. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Yes, good morning. I do. I've just turned it down. Can you hear me more clearly now? I've actually spoken with Mr. Kara, and I don't know if you have him on the line. He and I had spoken, and perhaps it would be more efficient if Mr. Kara went before I did.
Yes, I am. Of course. So this is Michael Kara, legal counsel for Alain and Lannying Agostini, being the registered owners of 61 Welland Avenue, which is immediately north of the subject site. Thank you. So on behalf of my clients, I submitted a letter of opposition on December 3rd, which is up on your screen now. Given the limited time I have to speak to you this morning, I'll be focusing my deputation on certain overarching issues, but ask that you also refer to the detailed list and visual that's up on your screen now. The proposal requires a variance from the maximum permitted height of main walls under the bylaw in order to facilitate the construction of a pitched roof that would effectively allow the applicant to incorporate 3 livable stories. In our submission on its face, this proposed variance alone should warrant a refusal from the committee, as the intent of this section of the bylaw is to discourage the construction of 3-story houses, which are out of keeping with the existing physical character of the neighborhood. From my client's vantage point, the concerns with the proposed height are compounded by the intrusive design of the proposed dwelling, which features a number of windows along its north elevation, which would effectively peer down into our client's bedroom and bathroom. This design is contrary to Section 312 of the official plan, which specifically states that new development shall be located and organized in a manner that ensures adequate privacy for neighboring properties, which the proposed dwelling would not. The excessive scale of redevelopment is also demonstrated by the significant variance sought from the maximum permitted floor space index, where the applicant is technically seeking an FSI of 0.74, whereas 0.6 is prescribed by the bylaw. I say technically because the definition of basement under the bylaw is such that the first story of the proposed dwelling is not being included in the calculation of the FSI. This is despite the fact that the first story is clearly visible above grade from both the street and from surrounding properties, such as my clients and Mr. Fletz. Absent this technical definition, the FSI of the development would be 1.06. Now, this calculation, which more accurately reflects the manner in which the new dwelling will be experienced by the public realm, demonstrates how this proposal represents an overdevelopment of the applicant's lot, which is simply too small to accommodate the ambitious building program envisioned by the applicant. Now, there are circumstances where the bylaw deliberately excludes certain rooms from the calculation of FSI, such as in the context of mechanical rooms in a home where they function exclusively to service the rest of the house. However, in our circumstances, the first story of the dwelling is proposed to include an integral 2-car garage, a bedroom with en-suites, a rec room with a bar and games area, an exercise room, a wine cellar, and numerous storage areas. I don't intend to belabor the point. My point is this. What we have before us is a first story that features a host of active uses that are visible above grade and should not so readily be discounted from the calculation of the FSI, nor the committee's analysis of the impact that the additional density will have on neighboring properties. In rendering its decision today, I would like the committee to note that even without the first story, the proposed FSI is significantly higher than what is permitted on this site, which speaks to the sheer mass of the proposed structure. Overall, this is a neighborhood that is characterized by 2-story detached homes with generous setbacks and garage and driveways that are visible from the street. The proposed development does not respect or reinforce this existing character, including with respect to the prevailing building size and height. Also required is a variance from the maximum driveway width to incorporate a 2-car integral garage behind the main wall of the dwelling. However, this integral garage would conflict with the prevailing location of garages within this neighborhood, where integral garages typically do not exist. In terms of the length and depth variances, especially when assessed in tandem with the proposed height and FSI, these permissions would create a new building envelope that hugs the property lines, such that there would be unacceptable shadowing impacts on our client's rear yard. These variances cannot therefore be considered minor, as the proposal fails to maintain the purpose and intent of Section 3123 of the official plan, which requires that new development be located and organized with adequate regard for shadowing impacts on neighboring properties. Finally, it's come to our attention that the construction of the dwelling will require applications to remove or injure 2 trees located along the shared property line of the applicant's and my client's site. Although the applicant has not filed an arborist report with the committee, the extent that the new dwelling will require the removal of these trees, the proposal fails to meet the intent and purpose of Sections 3121 and 24 of the official plan, which strongly encourage the preservation of trees, especially where lands are being redeveloped. In conclusion, in our submission, the proposal will result in unacceptable adverse impacts on our client's adjacent sites, including serious overlook and shadowing concerns, and therefore cannot be described as minor or desirable use for the property, and that the proposal fails to maintain the general intent and purpose of the official plan applicable zoning bylaw amendment in various regards. Based on the foregoing, we would respectfully request that the committee refuse this application, and subject to any questions that you have at this time, those are my submissions.
Chair. I want to begin just by indicating that we support and adopt the submissions that you heard from Mr. Cara and on behalf of his clients. We do want to focus on one issue in particular, and that is the prevailing open space character of the area directly on that street. And the result of that, a 4.58 meter wide driveway where 2.9 meters are required, is of course the impact it has on that front open front yard landscaping, and reduces it quite a lot. That's also affected by the introduction of a large porch and an area underneath. I would note that it's not clear, although need is not necessarily something that you take into account, it's not clear why a double car garage is required on a street facing this area. It's very well served by transit. There happened to be a bus stop that is just 100 meters and 70 meters away from the subject property, and the St. Clair subway station is only a 50-minute walk away. Welland Avenue is also well known for being a very comfortable road to cycle on. In fact, I conducted my site visit with my 3-year-old daughter on bicycle on Welland Avenue, and was very comfortable to do so. So there just really is not that justification or reasoning to allow for such a wide driveway. I'm not going to comment on some of the previous relations that Mr. Higgins felt important to bring to your attention. I don't think that it's germane to the decision that you have before you, except to say that if you do find that it's necessary to approve this application, where we are suggesting that you refuse it, we would ask that you impose a condition such that it would avoid the placement of windows on the subject property aligning with windows on our client's property. And I do have wording for such condition that I would be the placement of windows on the upper floor of the main south wall of the main building shall not align with or overlap the windows existing on the second floor of the north main wall at 51 Welland Avenue on December 10th, 2020. I'm happy to email that language if necessary. Subject to any of your questions, panel members, those are all of my comments. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry about that. Yeah, no, Ian Flett. This has happened before where I start right into my presentation. Ian Flett, I'm counsel for the owners at 51 Welland. 51 Welland is the property that is directly to the south of the subject property.
Yes, I am. Can you hear me? Okay. Thank you. I will. Thank you very much. Contrary to Mr. Flett's assertion that he went there, and I'm sure he did, on his bicycle with his daughter, Welland is in fact a very busy street and a bus route. My clients would like to build what is essentially a large single-car garage. The garage door is not wide enough to easily permit 2 cars to enter. It's not a very deep garage. So really it's a single-car garage with, although that shows, of course, 2 cars, with lots of storage for family use. In terms of the driveway width, it should be noted that the variance only occurs right at the garage door. It does not occur, if you could go to the site plan, please, at the street line, nor does it occur at the sidewalk level, excuse me. The driveway, in fact, is the same width going to the street line and to the sidewalk as the present driveway is, which is 3.03 meters in width. So the only variance is towards the house. We are not opposed, of course, to the suggestion that you impose a condition regarding windows not overlapping from our proposal to the south house in terms of privacy. And we have striven to get that approval from the south neighbors to no avail. Mr. Cara spoke earlier about 3 stories. There is no regulation that says you can't have a 3-story. And in fact, within 100 feet to the north of this property are 2 houses that have very obvious 3 stories. I believe they are number 65 and 67 Welland. We also have recently designed a 3-story house on Glen Rose, just to the south. And the issue is you're not supposed to have a height variance, and we don't have that. I take issue with the suggestion that the basement, which is a true basement at 5 feet below grade, should be counted as a story. Certainly it's not. The zoning department has agreed that it is not, and that it's we have a 2-story house in front of you. We do not have 3 livable stories above true grade. Shadowing, we don't have any side yard setback variances. We've done what we can to reach out to both neighbors. We, as I said earlier, we are the same height or less than the house to the north. Yes, we are taller than the house to this, excuse me, the house to the south. Yes, we are taller than the house to the north, and we've done many things to try to mitigate their concerns, meeting them, removing window, changing a window, assuring them that they had no issues with their chimneys, which aren't shown on these drawings, and to offer to cut the rear corner of the house on the northeast side by a 2-foot by 2-foot full 2 stories to allow them a corner view. You might just go to the site plan, please, regarding that. Overall, the building length and depth is really because of the basement space that is underneath the rear deck. The main 2-story wall is 18.21, which is slightly longer than the allowable at 17 meters. The front yard setback, which we haven't spoken about, is only because we have a small 1-story bump out at the front that does align with the immediate neighbor to the north in order to create an interesting facade and give the garage a little bit more room inside. Thank you very much for that. And the depth on the south side, the length and the depth, especially the length on the south side, the 2-story portion that the neighbor would see is 17.75 meters, which is just again slightly over the allowable. And you can see from this survey site plan that number 51 has a house that comes out quite a bit further than the back of our house above grade. So we don't have a front yard landscaping variance nor a rear yard. We did share with the north neighbor's lawyer the arborist report. We tried to submit that to the Committee of Adjustment, but again, we're 4 hours late. The trees are being injured only to the degree that the construction access across the existing asphalt driveway will injure them in the truest form. It's a technical thing, and the asphalt driveway will be completely covered as per the arborist report and the forestry requirements with a combination of plywood boards screwed together, potentially steel plates, et cetera, et cetera. You can see there that the railway track kind of line is the tree protection fencing that goes right around the existing trees, all of which are municipal trees. And yes, they are in front of both our house and the neighbor to the north. And we want to keep those. And even though the neighbor to the south has not put up tree protection fencing while they're constructing their pool, we believe the tree will survive. So again, there is no variance, and the injury to the trees is technical, and forestry is not opposing it, and that is my submission.
Thanks. Great presentations, all. I did want to speak, just ask the applicant. There are several pieces of correspondence from other folks in the area opposing this. Is there any, have you seen all those?
Yes, I have.
Is there any comment you want to make just in general without going to each one about those letters?
Well, I would say in terms of the styling of the design, It is similar, but not certainly not identical to the house to the south, which is something that's been built for a number of years in the neighborhood. Yes, it's a little more of a transitional style than a traditional style. There is no height variance. The wall variance is minor, but I want to stress that with these other neighbors, who I believe are certainly trying to support their neighbor at number 61, that because the letters really all rang true, the same kind of language. I do stress the point that there are no dormers and no gables. There's no vertical wall surface other than what we're showing, where we could, in fact, be allowed to have up to 40%, as I believe the committee would know, of the side walls full of dormers and gables, which would be a vertical extension of the present 3 foot or 0.91 meter side yard setback. So I think the other thing that we've done is we've brought the front entrance and small porch down to a level that is consistent with the neighbor to the south and only about 1.5 feet above the neighbor to the north. So in terms of the front door, visually, I believe that we have something that is quite consistent with the neighborhood. If you take away the space in the basement below the deck, we have, I would call them, very minimal length and depth variances. And I can't say enough about trying to work with neighbors. I believe this committee, and certainly the deputy treasurer, knows that we go out of our way to try to reach a compromise with both neighbors when they reach out to us after we give them our drawings. This is something I've done for 30 years. None of our offerings have resulted in those neighbors taking away their opposition. That's their right, certainly. But I believe we have before you a very salient, good proposal that will eventually, as people see it built, people will feel that it does indeed fit in with the neighborhood. I would say that it's certainly not higher than the neighbors that are 2 and 3 doors to the north, even though it's a different style. And I think that's all I really have to say. Certainly.
I have, yep, just one quick question, and maybe I'm stating the obvious, but in terms of the massing of the proposal, the way I understand it and see it, it's very similar, if not the same, as 61. Would you agree with that? And from the front, the massing of the building you're proposing to build?
I believe you're speaking of 51. 61 is to the north.
Sorry. Yes, I'm getting my numbers mixed up. Yes.
Yes, it is. It is. We felt that, and we always knew that the 2 bungalows that were owned by 2 elderly sisters would eventually become developed. A different client reached out to me many years ago to design the house to the south at 51, where the opposition is coming from regarding privacy and light. And we do understand that massing and scale is something that we take very seriously. And given that we could have a much higher side yard, as I've said a number of times, sidewalls, I think we've done a very good job of minimizing the impact on those neighbors, both sides and in the neighborhood.
I'd like to make a couple comments on this one. I understand all the letters of objections from the neighbors. There is, in terms of, I think most of them seem to be focused on the double car garage and the size of the overall building in terms of the FSI. When I look at the proposal, particularly what is currently next door, I feel, in my view, it is in keeping with what's in the immediate vicinity in any event. There are other 3-story houses in the neighborhood, houses that, apart from the one at 51, of similar size and massing. So I don't find this proposal to be any more imposing than what is currently next door. That's how I see it. In terms of the double car driveway, I am satisfied with Mr. Higgins' comments about it. The size of the driveway in terms of it at the near the sidewalk is going to remain the same. We have no front landscaping. Usually large driveways result in variances for softscape in the front, and we don't have that. I don't find that it's underneath the height, overall height, and I find the rear exterior sidewall height variance to be minimal in my view. So I'm supportive of this application. And I don't think in terms of its size and massing or the double car garage that there's really any impact in terms of what's currently, I think it fits in with what's going on in the neighborhood.
I would agree with Lisa. I think that's exactly right. I do have a bit of a technical question. I heard the agent say that he had submitted new plans that reflected an adjustment of the windows, I think on both sides. Maybe through your chair, if we choose to approve this, how do we reference those new drawings, which we haven't seen, or not?
We submitted, and then we were told the next day that we had submitted 4 hours late. The reason we were late was because we were trying to come up with a solution that would make all people happy. I know my client is willing to stand by the offerings to those neighbors with window removals, window shifting, and the 2 foot by 2 foot notch. So I would say to the neighbors, we'll go ahead with that. Right. There is no change to any variances.
Yes, thank you.
Madam Chair, no other comments. I'm prepared to bring forward a motion for approval of the application and that it be subject to, for the reasons I've already pointed out. I think it meets the 4 tests and it should be subject to urban forestry condition number 1.
I'll second.
My apologies, Madam Chair. Yes, I'm here. Yes, 13% would cover that strip behind the garage, all the way to the back of the main building, minus 90 centimeters to allow us to go into the on the parking pad. Oh, it's 13%. I'm sorry. Did you want to know how many square meters? I can get back to you in that 1 second. No problem. No problem. Just give me a sec, please. Sorry, Jake. So in the chart, you said it's there, right? Okay, perfect. Thanks. Yeah, yes, Madam Chair. It'll be 13% and it'll be 11 meters, 11 square meters.
Yeah, I think I made that motion, Chair. So maybe do we have that motion recorded, because it was related to the right. Yes. Yes, that sounds perfect.
I'll second.
Yep.
I'll second that. Yeah.
Craig Race, architect and applicant.
Sure. I have a question. If the agent could just explain what happened and what changed over the course of since the previous approval.
Sure, thanks, Peter. So the approved design is for a triplex where the ground floor and basement were a single 4-bedroom unit. Since that was approved, basically COVID has affected the way the homeowner intends to use the property. They've found that 2-bedroom units, which is what we're seeking to create, are better for live work opportunities. Not to mention they're just a little easier to manage. He's finding that his 4-bedroom units elsewhere tend to be run by large groups of roommates who treat it more like a rooming house, and the location of this site lends itself better to family users or single people who need home offices. So it's simply a reaction to that. There's no change to the exterior of the building at all. It's just for the use within.
Okay, thanks. I'm happy to move a motion on this. I remember this file the last go around, and I supported it then. I think it's a good use of the site, and it's a nice development. And these changes, I think, are reasonable and have no negative impact on the neighborhood. So I'd like to move approval with no conditions.
I'm happy. So I agree with you. I'm happy to second that.
Hi, my name is Mandy Zhang. I'm here today on behalf of the owner of 66 Blue Gardens.
Madam Chair, I am in support of this application. In my view, I think it is compatible with adjacent properties in terms of size and massing. I don't think this two-story rear addition is going to have any negative impacts. I do agree with the planning report in terms of the condition they're requesting for the second story balcony, that there be opaque screening imposed for that in terms of overlook. So I think this application meets the 4 tests, and I'm in support of it myself. I'm happy to bring a motion forward unless any of my colleagues have any comments. So yes, it is. Oh, okay. I wasn't looking at the screen. I'm like, yes. So it's a motion for approval subject to conditions set out in the planning report. And I believe we do, oh, no condition for Marine, it doesn't look like. So just the planning condition then. Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair. This is Bamdad Ben Baghdadi from BBA Design Studio. I'm the applicant and the architect for this project.
I do. Just briefly, I know that you had noted that the space would be used for studio or basically indeterminate at the moment. Can you just describe what you see as being the intended use of the space?
The same, Mr. Reed. We have the intention, I mean, my client has the intention to rent it out later on as designers studio or performing art studios. There are other uses permitted for this building that it's allowed by the bylaw, like clinics or artist live work studios, but we don't have any intention to have it as live work studio because that will requires development charges and that will change our parking space.
Okay. And just to make sure, I know that right now it's an auto shop and there are like environmental impacts basically, right? Like there's I think a paint shop in it, and I'm just wondering how that will work together with the users on the second floor.
As of now, based on the proposed use, since it's not a living space, there's no environmental impact. But if that becomes an issue later on during the permit process, we for sure will take care of it.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
I'm happy to move. I thought this was fairly straightforward. A good reuse, adaptive reuse of the site in a good location. So I don't think there are any major concerns. There is an urban forestry number 2 condition. So I would move approval subject to urban forestry condition number 2.
Hi, this is, I'm Wenda Lau. I'm Wenda Lau. I'm the architect and agent. Yes, that's right. I will be, yes, I will be.
Hello, Tim Bell here. How are you? Abs- Absolutely. My name's Tim Bell. My home address is 176 Moore Avenue in Toronto, and I am in support of the application.
Okay,
No problem. Thank you.
that's fine.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Kevin Wise. I'm the architect and the agent for this project.
Well, just a quick question, Chair. I noticed that this was before the committee 2 years ago for some variances for the main dwelling, and now this has come forward for a laneway suite. Just wondering what's changed since then. Why were you Was there any consideration of I guess laneway suites legislation bylaw wasn't passed in 2018. I'm answering my own question. No, thank you very much. I'm fine.
I'll start. I have some concerns with this application. I think with this new structure, that the new build house goes back quite deep, right? And the separation between the house and the proposed laneway suite is just over 4 meters. And that's, for me, that's concerning. I mean, given that 7.5 is requested for a required for a 2-story building. I think I really commend the architect in trying to accommodate accommodating the structure, the tree with this kind of creative structure. I think that's a very interesting approach. But I think altogether with the new large 3-story house that goes back quite a bit, plus this laneway suite, I would consider this overbuilding of the site.
I would agree with Mr. Reed's comments. I did have a concern about the setback from the rear wall of the 3-story, the new addition or the new house and the proposed laneway suite. I do feel it is tight, and it is a lot of building for the lot if we look at sort of, and I do remember this application from before, but since I sat on the first hearing of it, but this creates even more densification, obviously. If we look at 9 Shudell, the 2 adjacent neighbors, this represents a significant amount of development on the property compared to what's going on in the vicinity. So I think I agree. I think it is too much for, especially as a 2-story laneway suite.
Can you hear us, Larry? Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry, I had a minor technical issue. I'm going to be writing a letter to Apple Corporation shortly. Yes. Well, I listened to Peter. Unfortunately, I missed Lisa's comment, so I wonder. I'm not quite as concerned about the overbuilding. This is one of these ones where I do wish that we would have been able to see both proposals at the same time, and that might have shone a little bit more light on the cumulative impact of these changes. I thought the design actually, to echo what I think I heard Peter say, the architect's design I thought was quite sensitive and sympathetic. Sounds like they've been back and forth a little bit with planning staff already in terms of trying to satisfy planning staff's concerns. So not concerned or opposed to this one as my colleagues, but I'll leave it at that. Okay, thank you.
I, yeah, I'll move a motion. I think for the reasons that I set out before, and just I think a general note too. I think the application package didn't have any elevation drawings that showed the relationship between the front and the back house well, I think, and that was the area that I think that does need the most kind of attention. But I think it amounts to overbuilding of the site, so I move to refuse the application.
Second.
Well, I'll start. I'm sure I'm speaking for all of us. It's rare that we have an application which is so unanimously supported. And I would suggest that, you know, given the use, it's pretty much a slam dunk. I would move approval of this application, which I think is a needed facility in a great location. So I don't believe there are any conditions. So with no conditions.
Hello, yeah, this is Rawia Alamin from Jaimo Architects, representing the applicant. A few days ago, we received a report from Transportation Services outlining a condition that is a bit concerning to us, as it might affect the existing tenants in the building. And we did not have time to either revise the design or speak to transportation because we only received it a few days ago. So we think we just need a bit more time to address this issue. Yeah, correct.
I think that's a reasonable request, given that these comments from transportation came only recently. Sure, I'll move a motion to defer subject to the recirculation fees.
Hi, my name's Mike De Oliveira. I'm here representing 8 Jean Street, and I'm with Replacement Design located at 911 Davenport Road. And I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank Anita for her service. And hopefully I wasn't too much of a pain on her side over these last few years, but hoping her all the best in her next chapter moving forward.
Yes, I am. Thank you. Yes, I'm Jocelyn Haller. I'm at 10 Jean Street, north neighbor of 8 Jean Street. No. I'll just go to it. Yeah, sure. No problem. I wasn't approached to sign anything by my neighbor, but I just want to ensure that I looked at the elevations and the plan. I have no objection. I just want to make sure that once this gets passed, that the city holds the homeowner to those exact dimensions, and the north elevation drawing will remain the same, because that's the only one that impacts me. So.
Yeah, so there's no plans at the moment to deviate at all from what we're proposing here. If there are any changes, it will most likely be minor and within the allowable zoning bylaws, because obviously we don't want to have to come back to committee for any kind of other approvals. We're hopeful to get this thing started relatively soon. So we don't see any changes happening at the moment from what is proposed, but we'll definitely keep that in mind if there is anything moving forward. Would it just be subject to the plans or to the elevations? Site plan and elevations? No, I believe that would be acceptable.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I would appreciate that. That helps. Thank you so much.
Madam Chair, I'm prepared to bring a motion forward on this one. I think this is a very simple application. They're simply seeking to add a second-story addition. I did note, I know when looking at the FSI proposed, it may look large, but I did note that the existing FSI for the bungalow is already over. It's at like 0.849. So I don't think this is outrageous in any respect. I think it fits in with what's going on in the neighborhood. Lots of community support. So the motion's for approval, and it's subject to the condition we just discussed about tying it to the plans and elevations.
Hi, hello. Yes, yes. So my name is Andrea Afonso. I'm a representative from Urbanplex Architects, and I'm an agent for the applicant. No problem. All right, thanks so much. So first off, I would like to say good afternoon to the committee and thank you for your time. So looking at the cover letter, overall, I believe it would be best to take the time to go over the project's case. We have listed the bylaws and variances we are seeking on pages 1 to 3. And in addition to this, I would like to explain our project's rationale further in order to help gain a better understanding of our design intent and the need for these variances. Now, if you can scroll down to page 4. So this page shows the current existing building. So when we started designing this project, the first thing that we studied was the existing facade. We wanted to be sensitive to the existing character of the property, and we felt that it was important to preserve the current building with within its current surrounding context as much as possible. In particular, we believe that the existing front balcony located on the upper level captured this existing character of the building, and we therefore made the decision to do all of the expansion towards the back in order to better accommodate the program for the current family. So now if you can scroll down to page 5. So the expansion of the building is focused again on the back. To preserve the existing front roof and build the new roof behind, structurally, this new roof together with the parapet will need to be a bit higher. But unfortunately, this technical detail will require the height adjustment. So we are currently asking for 42 centimeter, which is from the existing 10.55 meters, or 97 centimeters from the 10 meter bylaw height variance. I do understand that our neighbor at 201 Humberside Avenue measured the height in a different way, but I would like to reiterate that our height variance has been reviewed by the zoning examiner and alongside zoning notice, and we are very sure that this measurement is what we need. Next, while we were designing the expansion, we did study the current street condition and its impacts. So on page 6, if you look at the street view, it can be seen that the height increase at the back of the property shouldn't be noticeable when walking alongside Humberside. And then before discussing the shadow, I would also like to mention that the expansion at the back does not require any rear back setback variance. The face of the new wall does match with the existing property with our neighbor on the east side. And now if you can open these supporting documents, which is November 20th-2, this outlines the shadow diagrams. Yeah, thank you. So our building sits on the south side of Humberside Avenue, and most of the shadows are casted on our own property or onto the street. There are times, however, when the shadow does cast on our neighbor's side at 201 Humberside, but despite this, it is important to highlight that the shadow pattern is not year-round, and as our neighbor is not on the north side of the property, our property, sir. We do agree, however, that the shadows seen in the first few diagrams are from the fence between both of our properties. And we are open to reduce the height to no more than 2 meters to minimize this shadow impact, which was suggested by our neighbor at 201 Humberside. I do hope that my presentation helped better explain our design intention to the committee members and our neighbor at 201 Humberside. Again, thank you very much for your time, and I'd be more than happy to listen to our neighbors' opinions and answer any additional questions.
Hello, can you hear me? Sure. My name is Hugo Pinto. I live at 201 Humberside Avenue, which is to the west of immediately west of the proposed development. Okay,
so I'm charging it. Is this any better now? Okay. My proposal, decrease my volume. Did I do that within the WebEx or? Is this any better now? Okay. So my opposition I submitted a letter, as you probably have, and I will just go over the points in the letter as brief as I can. I appreciate you may not have had time to go over it in detail, but it basically centers on mainly the shadow cast by the extension, the 3-story, 11-meter high extension, and also issues of privacy because there is a balcony directly overlooking the garden and the rear elevation of my property. Although the architect argues for a modest increase of 4%, as they put in, only a few centimeters, this obviously is from the center apex of the roof pitch at the moment, which is along the center line of the existing property running east-west. What they are proposing is to build an extension that would project 3.5 meters south of my existing building and 3.3 meters south of the 2-story building that is existent on the applicant's property, extend that footprint by 3.3 meters to the south and raise the roof by 11 meters at that point towards the center of the building at the spine at 10.55 meters. So at the moment, on the northern elevation of the current building, the roof line is at 7.2 meters, and they're proposing to raise it. I know the architect says I'm measuring it differently. I'm measuring it from her elevation or their elevation, where it shows that they are intending to increase the roof line on the south aspect of their house by 3.8 meters. And that's just going to be towering. It's actually the other elevation. So the current elevation, it's A3404, I believe, is the elevation that shows the facade that would be facing my property. And that is from the shadow diagrams as well. It can be seen that three of the times, and I put this in my letter as well, that there is a table that shows that the increase in shadow across the south wall of my building is going to be increased across the whole building on 3 of the dates that they simulated it for by factors of over 3 times and 2 times on a separate occasion. And on all those occasions where they increase the shadow on that south aspect, it's from between 4/5 to 5/6 of the entire wall of the building. And that's just going to cut direct sunlight most of the year round from sun coming in to the south wall of my building. It will also cast a shadow across the garden. That's mainly the fence. I accept that the architect says they will reduce that to 2 meters. And the other thing is how it will also, there is no other building on the street that the rear elevation projects that far south and is raised that high. There are bylaws that state that sidewalks should not be raised by 7.5 meters. I would presume the point of that is that it does not cut light to neighboring properties and does not have major negative shadow impacts on adjoining buildings. And I can see that up and down the street and also on Maberty to the east. The rear extensions do follow the stated bylaws with no variance, and certainly not on the back of Humberside. Is there any building that projects that far south and is raised that high? So I do believe it will have significant negative impacts on my home, the light that will come into it, and it will have an impact on the visual impact from the view from my garden and the south aspect of my house, and also a negative visual impact on the character of the neighborhood and the surrounding properties. And that's about it for my submission.
Yes, I am. My name is Tim Kewen. I'm at 203 Humberside Avenue. Okay, thank you. First of all, just wanted to say that I'm all in favor for gentrification and improvements to buildings in the neighborhood, as they're very old in this neighborhood. So that is not a concern. As well, my concerns aren't with the front of the building or how it will look from the street. It's predominantly the rear of the building, as Mr. Pinto pointed out, that is just of concern. And I would just like to reiterate, you know, his concerns are my concerns as well, as a person in this neighborhood, and as someone who has a home to the west of me. We're setting sort of a precedent. If this becomes precedent, then I could see this impacting my home and my backyard in the future as well. You know, as it pertains to, you know, the neighborhood specifically, you know, I do believe the increase in size of the home and height, the overall footprint, as well as the proposed height of the fence, will impact my neighbor's backyard negatively due to the lack of natural light. And as I said, the primary concern is that my neighbor and myself and those around us have kids that are, and there are very little places for our kids to play in this neighborhood. You know, so our backyards are the primary place where Mr. Pinto's little children play, as well as mine and others in the neighborhood. So I just feel it's important that, you know, because our kids can't play on the street or in the laneways, that the backyards remain well lit and not obtrusive to other homes, or, you know, becoming a privacy issue with balconies. So it's really just my concern are the precedent that this might set for future developments in the neighborhood, because of the nature of the small neighborhoods and the small footprints of property where the backyards are the primary place where our kids play. And then, if it's okay, I just wanted to give my 2 cents on the balconies that were proposed on this structure. I've lived here for 10 years now. We have a balcony on the top of our floor. And I would like to note that these balconies are havens for squirrels and more importantly, raccoons, where they continually defecate on just about everybody's backyard patio or deck in the neighborhood. So if this means overcoming the privacy issues that were raised earlier about balconies, I would also like to just give some neighborly advice that these spaces might seem like a good idea, but I will say they're maybe something you would want to consider as you do your build, because they just are not well used in the neighborhood or well liked by any of the neighbors. So that's just some neighborly advice, and that's all I have to say. So thank you for your time.
Yes. Yep, for sure. So first thing that I want to address is the height. So as discussed, the height of the building is only 0.97 meters from the 10 meters, which is less than 10% higher than the bylaw. And the shadow is not from the building, but from the fence. And again, as mentioned, we are happy to lower the fence height to 2 meters in order to minimize the shadow impact. And then secondly, regarding the privacy and the use of the balcony. So the balcony is facing the laneway, but we can definitely add privacy screens on the west side in order to address the concerns from both 201 and 203. And we also want to mention that we do not need any rear setback variance for the building with regards to the extension at the rear back. It does match the exterior wall for the east side of our neighbor on the east side. So I just wanted, and we're not building more than what we need. So I just wanted to address that as well.
Just a quick one, not about the height for now, but I do want to just ask about the soft landscaping in the back. You're asking for 28% where 50% is required. I wonder if you could speak to that. Looking at your site plan, I see you've got some green landscaping, looks like on the west side, but you're proposing a green roof over your garage, is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. Yes.
So the green roof just isn't included in the calculation, I assume.
No, it's not. It's not.
I have one. It's just more technical, but in the purpose of the application and throughout the materials, often the house is referred to as a 2.5 story, but this is 1.5 from my view. Is there a reason, or should we update the purpose?
It is actually 2.5 stories high. So.
It's just.
So sorry. So it is 2.5 stories high. From the front, it does slowly incline, so it does look like 1.5, but it is 2.5 stories high. That's why we want to keep the front as much as possible, because it does look, it maintains the character of the building. So just wanted to highlight that as well.
So the existing 3rd story is oriented towards the rear and the sides. Is that right?
Yes, it is.
Or 2.5.
Mhm.
Okay, thanks. I'm happy to start. I actually think this is a really well-designed project, and I understand the neighbors' concerns about shadowing and some overlook, but I think that the incremental amount over what is permitted in terms of additional shadow on the neighbors' properties is extremely minimal, if anything. And that's partly helped by the fact that most of the shadow cast is cast on the house itself. I think it's a sensitive way to get some more density with keeping the kind of rhythm of the street as it is. And yeah, I think it's relatively modest. I support this.
I'll just weigh it. I would agree. We have, as a committee, I think, approved similar applications in similar neighborhoods for similar homes, and I think this is in keeping with the types of things that we find suitable for these kinds of neighborhoods. I did want to just acknowledge. I thought I read obviously the neighbor's letter. I wanted to commend. I thought it was a very well written letter of opposition with some good arguments. Having said that, I think that the proposal, as Peter's pointed out, is well designed, and with the additions the agent talked about in terms of lowering the fence and putting the screening around the balcony, I think that would make this a suitable application.
Are we able to include the 2-meter fence height as a condition, or is that just something between the property owners? Yeah. Okay. I'm happy to bring a motion for approval, subject to that the 3rd story balcony west side have a 1.5 meter opaque screen. Sure. That the 3rd story balcony, the west side of the 3rd story balcony have a 1.5 meter high opaque screen.
Happy to second that.
The west side. Yeah.
Hi there, it's Monica Kuhn calling. I'm the agent for the owners.
Just a quick one. I noticed that this is a unit in a historical row home complex. Have you spoken with all the adjacent row home owners? I just noticed I couldn't see any indication of support from them.
Yes, we sent out the same letter that you have went out to all of the whole row on that block. And one of the other neighbors to the east also has a similar roof deck. So there was no opposition.
Okay, thanks.
Madam Chair, this is a very straightforward application in my view. I understand in this case the need for the roof deck. It looks like there's very little outdoor amenity space in any event, and I think the third floor dormer is very minimal in terms of any impact. I don't see any impact. So I'd like to bring a motion forward for approval of the application, and that it be subject to the condition you outlined that's in the Heritage Services report about the plans.
This is Timothy Mitanides from Creative Union Network. I'm the agent for the owners.
I'm happy to bring forward a motion. I think this is a very simple application, and just adding another unit and finishing the basement. So I think that's a positive thing, and I can see no negative impacts on the adjacent property. So I move to approve, subject to urban forestry condition 1.
I'm on my phone. Thank you. Yes, my name is Michael Taylor. I'm the agent for the owners.
Madam Chair, I'd like to bring a motion forward. This is very minor. We're asking for, very minimal reduction in the north side lot setback for the deck. So my motion is for approval of the application, and there are no conditions.
Yes, Paul Gust from Betts Pool, Stouffville.
I have a question, and it was raised in the letter by the neighbor, I think, and just around the screening of the mechanical equipment for the pool. Can you explain how that's gonna be screened from the street?
Yeah, it was a chain link fence prior when we submitted. It's actually going to be a board fence, and I've showed pictures of it. So the board fence is going to run along the I believe it's the east and the north, and there's going to be more tree planting along the north side to hide the board fence more so to satisfy heritage. So the pool equipment won't be an issue because it will be inside the board fence.
Okay, great, thanks.
Okay, thank you.
I'll bring forward. I think this is fairly straightforward. It's a function of a really rather unique lot configuration where there really isn't a front and backyard. It's a side yard, and it doesn't seem an unreasonable request, and the variances seem quite minor. And with the explanation about screening, I think it's fine. I'll move a motion that we approve subject to heritage condition.